Welcome to the first edition of the Indignants for the week of August 23rd, 2021. We're a weekly podcast diving into current events, politics, and social movements. This week's episode, we talk with sex worker Kinky Nyra about Onlyfans' recent 180-degree turn on banning pornography on the site.
So you're an OnlyFans patron, I guess. Explain it to me because this is my first time meeting you, Nyra. Nice to meet you. My name's Matthew.
Oh, nice to meet you. Yeah, so I'm actually a full-time sex worker, cam model, all that stuff. I've been in this industry for longer than OnlyFans has even existed, but OnlyFans blew up in it was 2018, 2019 when the site kind of started to blow up and you started to hear more about it and it went a little bit more mainstream. And as you know, celebrities started joining and all that. So they've historically been a very sex worker friendly platform. Like that's kind of where they got their beginning, was porn essentially. But as they've sort of grown and blown up and now you hear about all these celebrities on it, they've sort of taken that and run with it. And now they're facing a lot of pressure from multiple places right now. So one is evangelical groups, like anti-porn groups that think that pornography should just be banned off the internet. They think that it's exploitation of women. They think that every woman in the sex industry is a trafficking victim, which is ironic and frustrating for me because I actually am an ex-trafficking victim and I got into this line of work like aside from that, like I'm doing it consensually and to sort of reclaim that. So it's really frustrating, like the parallels. Anyways, so there's a lot of pressure from evangelical groups. But like I said, one of the biggest factors right now and why we're having this issue is they have become so popular and they have so many investors. Those investors don't really want to be associated with that. So
The
they are
dirty
trying to
word
sort of
called sex trafficking, right? Like this is
exactly. That's where a lot of the issue comes from. And the problem is like sites like OnlyFans do not generally facilitate trafficking. Obviously, bad things happen on every website, but if you actually look at the data, there is far more child sex trafficking that happens on Facebook than on sites like OnlyFans. Because when you think about it, Facebook, there's no ID verification, there's no consent forms, there's no like model releases and stuff. Whereas on adult platforms, you have to have your ID verified. You have to take pictures of you like holding your ID. You have to send in model releases, like all this stuff, and you have to renew that stuff every 6 months or so. So like the likelihood of someone who's underage or someone who's not doing this willingly getting on the platform is a lot lower than other places on the internet. So like I just want to squash that to begin with. People a lot of times associate like sex work and adult work with like all these nefarious activities, and it's actually harder to get away with those activities on these platforms because they are so rigorously monitored.
well, and that's
Like,
exactly the thing, right? So there used to be, what was it? I think it was called, well, there was stuff like rentboy.com, there was
mhm.
backpage.com, all of these sites that were shut down that have forced this industry to kind of reinvigorate itself and legitimize a little more because yes, there was some nefarious stuff that was going on with places like Backpage. In Canada we have, we do have, as far like in my eyes, there is a sex trafficking concern in Canada, but they need to stop focusing on sex workers and
Yeah, see,
focusing.
that's exactly it. There's a huge difference between sex workers and sex trafficking victims. Like it would be like equating someone who works at McDonald's with an indentured slave or like indentured, like, in another industry. Like that doesn't, they're not the same thing at all. They're completely separate issues. And one of the biggest things is like we've seen this again historically in European countries and even here in Canada, where the legalization of sex work and the less taboo it is, the more protections there are for sex workers. Like if I was doing what I'm doing in the US, if I were sexually assaulted or robbed or forced into it, I would have no legal recourse because if I went to the police, I would wind up getting charged with a felony.
Or raped. because that seems to
Exactly.
happen very often in when sex work is prosecuted. That's when you have sex workers being murdered, sex
Hmm.
workers being abused, sex workers going to law enforcement, and the cops going, too bad, you're a greasy hooker, we don't want to talk to you, and I'm going to rape you in my squad car, if you'll pardon the phrase. Because
Yeah,
this,
well, that's exactly it. And honestly, it's sickening, but there's many US states where it's 100% legal for an undercover cop to contact you regarding your back page ad or whatever. If you're like doing full service work, they come, they have sex with you, and then they throw you in handcuffs and throw you in the back of a squad car. That is
Wow.
100% legal in many US states.
Wow.
So it's
well,
legalized rape.
look at
Wow.
what was her name in New York City. She was like a 17-year-old girl. The detectives had her in the back of the squad car.
Oh
She
gosh.
was raped, but the
Yeah.
cops were able to get off on it because, bad sex workers, they're guilty because, you know, I'm a big fan of the whole ethical slut concept, if that makes any sense. I think that's the
100%.
yeah, like the slut power is an actual thing, and we should all be empowered as such to, you know, like good.
Well, that's the
Thank you,
thing. And the
Nyra.
thing
Thank you.
is like shutting down these sites, even shutting down Backpage, as many issues as there were with Backpage, of course, shutting down a platform like that, it didn't make all those dirty sex workers go away. It just pushed them further underground and further onto the streets, and it forced them all to get pimps and stuff.
Yep.
So it took agency away from us. It did nothing to protect us. And the thing is, when you push sex workers further underground, it becomes even harder to differentiate between consensual sex workers and sex trafficking victims. And that is a huge issue.
With the OnlyFans aspect, the last I heard, so, you know, apparently OnlyFans was removing pornography and adult content from their platform. And when I say adult content, I don't think they were removing people that were, showing how to distill vodka on the platform. They were
Oh no,
removing, you know,
no, it's just sexual
stuff that I
content.
could
Yeah,
like get off to when I'm lonely on a Sunday night and my wife doesn't want me to bug her, right? Like this is what we're restricting is consenting adults from consenting behaviors.
exactly. And again, the thing is that just push people further underground, which means that there is less oversight over the activities that they're engaging in, right? So again, it creates more of a conflation between sex work and sex trafficking. It makes it harder to differentiate between who's doing this consensually and who's not, because everybody is kind of, all like it's all kind of sketchy. So that
Well,
becomes
and
a
that's
huge
the thing.
problem.
Sex work, like, as much as I would love sex work to be like going to the Mandarin for a buffet and just like open access to everything, it works best in kind of a gated profile, I find, right? Like, you want to make sure that some 17-year-old girl in a desperate situation doesn't just decide to start, even if she wants to, that, there needs to be certain gates on it, right? So if we kind of
Exactly.
professionalize it,
Exactly. That's actually why Pornhub did the thing earlier this year. You've probably heard about how Pornhub removed like half the videos on their platform. They now make it so that the only people that can upload videos are verified users, and they have to have, again, the ID verification. They have to have model releases, all those things to ensure that the people in the videos are consenting not only to the video being taken and that they're old enough, but they're also consenting to it being posted on that platform. So
yes.
that was a big step.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's where OnlyFans was great because it kind of legitimized it. I've been to OnlyFans. I'm not a big fan of paying for content, Nyra. I do apologize. So I don't get to see anything on OnlyFans. And OnlyFans seem like the people that I know that have OnlyFans pages that I don't pay for, so I don't get to see them. Um, they loved it. They were big fans of it. And then on the other side of the spectrum, because I am a fan of pornography, you have a site called Chatterbait.
Hmm.
Now, have you ever used Chatterbait?
Yes, I use Chatterbait and MyFreeCams. I'm on pretty much every adult platform, like mainstream adult platform that you can think of. So I have a bit of experience with all of them.
So when I compare Chatterbait and OnlyFans, Chatterbait seems to have less gatekeeping. You know, like it's when I'm on Chatterbait and, you know, there's a large international contingent on Chatterbait, and I think internationally there is a definitely a sex trafficking problem, but that's more of a poverty problem than sex
Yeah.
trafficking.
Well, that's the
Um,
thing. A lot of it stems from poverty. Even with Chatterbait, again, you have to be ID verified. Like they go through all the same things. There's definitely the issue of, you know, girls getting brought into these like cam houses and, you know, being forced to work. And, you know, that's its own separate issue. And that's something that obviously needs to be addressed as far as like a poverty issue, because that's the thing is a lot of these women are survival sex workers. And that's what I was for many years. And the thing about OnlyFans was it gave a lot of these women an opportunity to get off the streets, stop doing like full service work, or stop doing more dangerous lines of work. And they are now able to do it from the comfort of their own home without a manager, without, you know, a ton of expensive equipment or tools. All you really need is something that takes pictures and something with an internet connection. And, you know, you can, you know, start making money there. So it was actually kind of a safe haven for a lot of sex workers, and it gave a lot of people an opportunity to get out of more dangerous lines of work.
and
You
that's
guys know way more about this than I do, I gotta say.
Mike, you have to spend more time masturbating. That's-
I do the free stuff, and I mean, for me, it usually only takes 2-3 minutes because, like, you know, you don't want to waste time, right? So,
Popcorn might
Yeah,
be done soon. We're
free stuff
good.
is fine. Free stuff is fine as long as you're watching it from verified uploaders. Because don't forget,
yeah,
all those videos on Pornhub, people get ad revenue from those. It's like YouTube in that way. So
yeah, that's good.
Being in the industry, I'm having a really hard time with the surge in like family fetish. You know, like there's the Freudian porn of like mother son,
oh,
dad
taboo.
daughter.
That's always been a very, very
Yeah.
popular porn category for years. I think it was it 2011, 2012? It was rated the most popular category on Pornhub. So that's nothing new.
It's a strange category for me. It's a very
Well,
strange category. I'm
a
big
lot
into
of dudes out
fetish.
there want to fuck their stepsisters. I don't know.
Wow.
Ah, to each their own. To each their own. So long as everybody's
Yeah.
consenting, I don't give a fuck who you fuck. Like this is, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, strange. So on the OnlyFans thing again, I heard they've now decided that they're still going to allow adult content.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they,
so about a week after they made their initial announcement, they kind of realized they fucked up. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, their valuation with their investors. They didn't really think this through. And that was evidenced also by the fact we had no notice ahead of time that this was happening. There were people talking about it and speculating. But if I were to email OnlyFans like right before this happened and say like, "Hey, I heard these rumors," they denied it vehemently up until that article came out, and even after the article came out, until they announced it and sent us the email, they were denying it. They were saying it wasn't true. So it's like we found out when you guys did. We found out from the news. We found out from that Bloomberg article. And they didn't give us much time because assuming they decided to stay with their timeline there, they would give us about a month to find like scramble and find a new platform and build up our audience and build up our income on a new platform and you know make sure that our bills are paid. So a lot of people were freaking out. It sent a lot of people into very serious depression. I know one girl, she had to put notice in like with her landlord on her apartment because she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to pay her rent the next month. I've heard reports of someone who committed suicide because of the news. Um, you know, it would be again like any other person in any other industry. Imagine you got notice that you are essentially losing your job like 2 months before the holidays. That's kind of a big deal, especially
oh,
in the
absolutely.
pandemic.
Absolutely. It's deplatform like oddly enough, I'm somehow we might have to bleep this out, but I'm banned from YouTube. Like I
For
What?
what?
um I used to well I still do stream video games, but I streamed a game called Wolfenstein New Colossus with
Great game.
yeah, great game. The whole premise is killing Nazis, and the
Yeah.
title of the stream was Let's Kill Nazis.
Oh my gosh. And you got
And
banned for that?
yeah,
A
and
permanent ban for that?
this was years ago before like I was just and so I lost access to a YouTube account that had some couple of game streaming videos, but had all of like my family videos, the camping trips. Like
Man.
I was like, wow, like
Oh no.
yeah. So I don't feel your pain
Yeah,
economically, but
mine's been shadow banned for a while too.
the
But I
power
got a
of
Yeah.
question. I got a question that I'm interested in though.
Mhm.
What's been everybody's reaction in the community since they did the 180 turnaround?
People are enraged. Everybody pretty much says fuck OnlyFans. A lot of people are staying with the platform for now just because, again, like it's really hard to build up your audience on a new platform, get everybody like switched over, and they need that like financial stability. So a lot of people are kind of maintaining their accounts for now. But
But
pretty
going
much
somewhere
everybody
else too at the same time.
pretty much everybody's switching over. The really popular one I'm seeing right now, which I switched over to as well, is Fansly. But there's a ton that people are switching over to and pushing for. So, oh, you might not want to. I would be careful. It's very not safe for work.
Oh, this is I didn't realize I was sharing my screen.
Oh yeah, you still are.
Yeah,
Whole
I'm like
time you've been, dude.
I'm gonna Google Kinky Nyra and see what
That's
I
what
can find out.
I'm like,
So
how's he gonna edit this now? Because like the whole time.
yeah, that doesn't show on the stream, fortunately. That just shows to you
Oh, okay.
guys. So yeah,
Oh, okay,
Okay.
Nyra,
cool.
I got caught creeping you.
Okay, that's fine. You can creep. You can creep. I was just like, oh no, don't scroll any further. You
So
might not want to show this.
let me pull back up my browser window there, and yeah, we'll go back to something a little more normal.
But yeah, so a lot of people are switching over to other platforms. People are very, very disillusioned with OnlyFans. They have been for a while. They fucked people around on a lot of things. And the owner, well, he's not really the owner, the director, the guy that owns 75% of OnlyFans, um, his name is Leonid Radvinsky. I'm probably butchering that. He also owns My Free Cams and a few other sites. He's not a nice guy. You can just search his name and you can find lots of articles about him. He was actually sued by Amazon, funny enough.
Who was that? What was this name again?
Wow.
Sorry, I missed that.
Leonid, so Leonid, and then Radvinsky, Radvinsky.
Sounds like East European, Russian.
I think he's
Florida-based Ukrainian
Ukrainian.
businessman,
Yeah.
Okay.
pornographer. He is the founder of the cam site My Free Cams and the majority owner of OnlyFans.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna say anything too incriminating on this public stream, but Mike,
Yeah.
if you want to talk to me afterwards, I will fill you in on some interesting tea regarding him. But he's not really a great person. But it's just really interesting too. This is a bit of a sidetrack, but I've had a few people come to me and be like, "Well, OnlyFans wasn't exclusively a porn service. It was for creators, like for whoever, and you sex workers just took over the platform." And I'm like,
Mm.
it's literally owned by a
Wow.
guy who made his wealth like in porn. Like that is what he does. He
Yeah,
owns porn sites.
and
So
according to Forbes, some of his porn sites were less than they weren't the sort of thing you wanted to have. Apparently, according to Forbes magazine, there was published a link directing web users to a site claiming to offer pedophiles more than 10,000 illegal preteen passwords.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So that's why I was saying I don't want to say anything too
that's
incriminating for
Yeah.
myself.
that's where we'll leave that at there. But yeah, no, this
We
is
were just
this
reading
is
that
the
article
world.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the world of
No, more so
pornography.
I have more information about him, but because it's very like it's hearsay, allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. I don't want to say it publicly, but yeah, you get the gist. He's not a very nice person.
No.
So as a whole, like the platform, it's fucking garbage. It's run by garbage people, but again, it provided a lot of opportunities for people. And because it was so mainstream, it was very easy to make an income on there. You didn't necessarily have to have a following of your own. Like most of these subscription sites, you have to already sort of have fans that are willing to come and see your content on the website. Whereas with OnlyFans, it was so commonplace that like, you know,
Ev-
people would just find your profile and they would subscribe. And like half of my subscribers, I don't even actually know. I don't even know if they're following me on social media. I have no idea how they found me.
I thought it
So it
was
provided,
actually a surprising platform for creating
yeah,
acceptance of sexuality, because all of a sudden, like literally, the girl next door would have an OnlyFans site.
yeah, for
You know,
sure.
and guess what? You know, yeah, sure. You know,
She
you'd
should
be like,
call it that
you
too.
can't
That's really good.
argue. You can't argue with your neighbor when she's saying, "Yeah, I show my titties on the internet and I'm making $2,000 a day." Like, you know, fantastic. Like, I'm not going to say that's a negative thing, because, like, once again, you have a self-empowered worker, right? Like, this is
Exactly. And at the end of the day, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, anyways. So
no.
we're all selling our bodies for labor.
Oh,
Doesn't
trust
matter
me.
whether you fuck or whether you like lift heavy construction materials, like you're selling your body for labor. So,
Yep, yep. And at least you're getting to do it the way you want to do it.
exactly. And that's the big thing. It provided a lot of freedom. And you have to also consider the intersectionality when it comes to people that have chronic like physical or mental disabilities that wouldn't be able to work a traditional 9 to 5 job. The freedom that it provided for them, because again, all they have to have is something to take pictures and videos and an internet connection. So
Tell
it
me,
provided a lot of opportunities for disenfranchised individuals as well.
tell me about the tomatoes. I remember you telling me about the tomatoes, and you were making a boatload of money off of, like, or was it grapes, or what was it?
It was pretty much all food. So a lot of what I do is some niche fetish stuff. There's a few different categories that I do, but one that Mike, for some reason, seems to be absolutely fascinated by is Food Crush, um, where it's
Uh,
essentially a woman, generally, stepping on food, um, generally phallic type food. Like you'll see like eggs, tomatoes, grapes, those things are pretty
that's just
common.
gross.
But yeah, that is totally a
Uh,
fetish of just yeah, I have
So,
lots of
like,
videos of me just wearing
predominantly.
heels and stepping on stuff.
Oh, fantastic! I'm not gonna lie. I am a foot fan. Not gonna lie. So,
Foot fetishist, yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know,
wow.
there's something about the ankle. Get the right ankle in the right heel, and I don't care who you are, you will have a foot fetish. Like, it's
I
just gonna happen.
agree.
It's just
Wow.
gonna happen.
I implore anyone that thinks foot fetishes are weird, get your feet licked once and then come back to me.
Oh, damn ticklish.
I'm ticklish too. It feels good though.
I don't
Swear to
know.
God.
I'd be afraid I'd like tick your teeth out.
Okay, Mike.
I I
Maybe start with
discovered
a
I had a
pedicure.
foot fetish when I filmed a foot fetish clip with another model, and it was like this like mutual foot worship video. And after that, I was like, "Oh dang, I'm into this." So yeah,
Ah,
you'd be surprised.
Self
interesting. All right.
self-discovery is one of the best voyages you can take. Like, this is
Sex work has been great
Uh,
for me for sure.
so.
And again, being someone that had sort of a not so great history, like sexually, it's really been liberating to me, and it's sort of like taught me a lot about my own sexuality and my own boundaries and stuff, and that's been a really, really big thing in healing for me.
good for
So
uh,
you.
That's
Hey,
fantastic.
remember, sorry, you remember when we talked once about a co-op idea? Have you heard that being kicked around at all by
uh,
anybody?
a little bit. There are a few like platforms that sort of are
Well,
teasing that idea. It's just really hard to get things to take off,
are there
especially.
any, like, just
Hmm?
out of curiosity, are there currently any woman-owned pornography
Yes.
platforms?
Yeah, there are quite a few actually. There are quite a few women and sex worker owned platforms. One that I am personally very familiar with, since you were bringing up campsites earlier, is called Nude TV. So like NOOD.TV, and it's actually owned by a Canadian sex worker. So shout out.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, there are quite a few. I would say just for fans, but it recently came out that the owner of that site He just sexually assaulted a few people, so that's
This is
wonderful.
why,
But
like, I'm sorry, we need to get the douchebags out of pornography. Like,
yeah,
like, what was his name that was the Kink Castle? He was doing a lot of stuff for
Yeah,
them.
that's almost impossible. So you just basically have to kick all the dudes out of pornography, really, is what it
No,
is.
I just
well,
think
and
you.
then
It's
even with the
like
dudes, there are a lot of women that
are
exploit and take
nasty.
advantage of other models. We actually just sort of dealt with a similar situation to that where Fansly, I'm not going to shit on them. They're a great platform in my opinion. I've moved over to them. But one thing that they've really fucked up on is they reached out to a lot of really popular models and offered them, I don't know how much, but quite a large sum of money, as well as higher payouts than other models in order to promote the site. So these people were going around, I won't say lying about the site, but they were sort of, these
Over
are people that you
exaggerating.
over exaggerating, and these are people that you look up to and you
Mhm.
trust, and they're essentially manipulating you for their own financial benefit. And I'm just going to say it because it's already been said online by people with way larger following than me. Amaranth, fuck you, because you're one of them.
Ah,
She was literally in a voice chat similar to this one that I was in recently, and she got called out really hard for it because she was pushing the platform really hard. And the thing is, like, a lot of sex workers are really skeptical of all these new platforms, right? Because we don't know how long they're going to be around. We don't know if they're going to do the same thing Onlyfans did. We don't even know if they're legitimate because these new platforms pop up, and it's like, we're expected to give them all of our personal information, our ID, our banking information. They do the whole like facial recognition software thing. And like,
Wow.
how is that information going to be used in the future?
Mm.
That's a huge concern
who
for a
owns
lot of
your
us.
content, right? Like simple things, like where is your content? Like this is the problem with the pornography industry is it does almost need that cooperative model. It needs that workers own cooperative platform because then you're going to see less of this, I can set up a website tomorrow and make it look totally legit and basically duplicate OnlyFans, and I could be anyone. And you start
Mhm.
uploading your content, and then once it, like this, the theft of content in pornography has been a thing since the dawn of time. There's
Mhm.
a friend of mine in the 80s that used to post ads in newspapers up in the Northwest Territory and places like that that just said call for a free catalog, and he was just duping content, right? Like just duping. Nobody's gonna, you know,
Yeah,
complain
well,
about
and
the
that's a
pirated stuff they
oh,
get.
sorry.
No, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say that's one of the concerns that people have with Fansly and why people were kind of like side eyeing the girls that were heavily promoting it, because we don't know who owns the site. They're completely anonymous. So at least with OnlyFans, we knew who owned the site. There was some kind of like accountability there, I guess. With some of these other sites, we actually don't know who's running it.
Mm.
And so that's a huge concern. And the thing with a co-op is like it sounds all great and wonderful, but running an adult site and starting an adult site and competing with some of these big platforms is not as easy as it sounds. First of all, you have to deal with the payment processors. Visa and MasterCard fees are around $2,000 a year just to process credit cards. And then they take a 15% cut on top of that. Um, and then you also have to consider like the investment capital in order to get something like that up and running, to provide the same features, to provide the bandwidth for streaming and videos and stuff. There's a lot that's sort of involved, and I think that's also why we're seeing more and more of these sex worker run platforms popping up now than we did 10 years ago. So there is some good that's come from this in the sense that there are more people taking direct action and starting those collectives and those co-ops, but it's a slow process. And
Oh,
you have to consider
absolutely.
that again, a lot of sex workers are disenfranchised.
The only thing I've been able to find on Fansly is that oddly enough, it's the parent company is the Jim Pattison Group, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jim Pattison Group. He's, I believe, Blackburn News in the London area might be Jim Pattison, but they're a radio station company and they also do billboards. If you're driving around, you'll see Jim Pattison or Pattison Group on billboards for lease. So
Interesting.
that's an interesting concept if they're the guys behind it. Because they're a very mainstream organization. Like
Yeah.
that's
That
so
would also make sense as to why they would want to remain anonymous if that were the case. But again, that doesn't really instill a lot of confidence in your
no,
user base,
because
especially with what just happened with OnlyFans.
yep, exactly. Because next thing you know, it gets out that Pattison Media Group, who may have evangelical stations in their marketplace, is being pressured to remove the adult content.
Yeah, well, not even just remove adult content, but again, I've been in this industry for 7 years, so I've seen a lot of shit, and I've been through a lot of these platforms. And there's one specifically that I remember that thankfully I was not on personally, but I was around for this. Was Clipvia. They were a very popular like clip site, basically, where you could go and buy porn videos. And again, no one really knew who ran it. It seemed like a pretty legitimate website. They were, very well established for many years, and then all of a sudden, one day, the site owner just said, fuck it. And he up and left and took everybody's money and just shut down the site and just disappeared from the internet. Never to be
Welcome
heard
to
of
the
again.
21st century version of capitalism, where you can
Pump
just
and
do
dump,
that.
pump and dump.
hmm
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
And
it
a lot of people got screwed and lost thousands of dollars. And again, they don't know what happened to their content and stuff after that. Like, who
Yep.
knows? And, a lot of people shortly after that found their content on a lot of these, like, you know, pirating sites and stuff. And who knows, there's a lot of speculation that he wound up selling a lot of the content from the website to these sites.
Mhm.
So,
what would you say are the next steps that we should take? Like what should the industry start trying to do?
well, I definitely agree with having the like co-ops and collectives having more sex worker run platforms. I think that's a really, really big deal. There are a few, like I said. Oh, another one that I forgot to mention, I Want Clips, is sex worker run and owned. So they've had some of their own issues in the past. No site is infallible, but they are owned by a sex worker. Nikki Benz, I believe, is her name.
Okay.
So yeah, there are a few, and they are starting to become more popular. And I think that is definitely where a lot of the industry is progressing. But a lot of it's just like education, and we're starting to see that more and more, especially with OnlyFans being as mainstream as it is and this being as big of a deal as it was. Because, again, 5 years ago, no one gave a shit about sex workers. People are like, you're just dirty whores on the internet, who fucking cares? Like, it wasn't a big deal. But now with OnlyFans, like you said, being as big as it is, and all these girls doing it, your neighbor's fucking doing it, your cousin's doing it, your stepsister's doing it, whatever. um it,
Oh, the
it's
stepsister.
it's attracting a lot more attention and a lot more anger, not just from the models on the site, but also from the users, who are very upset that these girls that they're supporting, well, first of all, like, they're losing all their content because all the content's being deleted, like, it has to be deleted or had to be deleted by October 1st. So all the stuff that they paid for is just gone. People that have been in the industry for long enough have backups of stuff, and there are ways to export it from the site. But I mean, as far as like the users, like the consumers, the men, I'm generalizing, obviously,
I bet the
they're
stats
losing
trend
out on
men.
stuff that they paid for, essentially.
That's a complete shame. Like this is the thing. Like this is and so with the fact that these platforms can die overnight, that some of them are run by assholes, some of them are run by complete deviants, like without getting into the aspect of, God forbid somebody say we're grooming people into the sex industry, are there avenues that if somebody's interested in sex work, if somebody wanted to be just as awesome as you, Nyra, because I've seen your Twitter now, is there some place that if somebody's interested in getting into sex work, where can they turn to? Where can they go and find, you know, the proper way to get into this?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where there's not really one specific place to start. One thing that I will say is start by doing your research. Start, create a Twitter, like get into the sex work discourse and stuff on there. There's a lot of guides on how to keep yourself safe and anonymous online. What sites are the best to use? How much they pay out? What restrictions they have? But yeah, I would just research what sites you're interested in and sort of go from there and see what their restrictions are and see what kind of content other people are posting. But the biggest thing is like safety, right? So that's something that you really don't want to neglect. You definitely want to make sure that there's no connection between your online sex work persona and your real name or address and stuff. And those kinds of things are really, really important. But there are quite a few websites that sort of talk about that. I still can't think of the name of that one, but one that I know of that it's used for sex workers in all industries. So it was originally a stripping website, but they're like a forum site. It's called Stripper Web. So the Stripper Web forums is a good place to start. Amber Cutie is another good place to start.
Is there any organizing going on in the sex worker industry? Like within North
Oh,
America? I know I've heard talk about it in like Europe and stuff like that, but once again, I'm not in the industry as much as, if anybody's looking for a tall, lanky ginger, sign me up.
I mean,
But
there's something for everyone, but yeah, there is a lot of organization. Um, there are a lot of different organizations that are sex worker run that are sort of pushing for rights and for education in this industry. One that I will shout out because they are wonderful. It is the only sex workers union in the U.S., like official accredited union. It's called APAG, Adult Performers and Actors Guild, I think is what it stands for, APAG. But they are an actual like unionized group of sex workers for people in the adult industry. So
nice. That's the Adult Performance Artist Guilds.
yes, there you go. Thank you.
apagunion.com. So that's I'm gonna have to get my APAG card. That's
Um, One I will also give a huge shout out to that isn't necessarily like a union, but I will give a shout out to Pineapple Support. So they're an adult industry support network, and they provide mental health care and advice to performers across the globe. Generally, it's free or very low cost. So they essentially provide mental health resources and stuff for people in the adult
Wow.
industry, and they're amazing.
Hmm.
thank you for that because
Uh,
these are things like I said, I run around a lot of fringes of society, and a lot of my female friends have done sex work or are actively sex workers, and yeah, I've never heard of these resources, but I have heard of their issues. So that's
yeah,
fantastic. Thank you for that.
I found the name of the website. So the website that I was thinking of is webcamstartup.com. It's actually run by a girl named Ari Saunders. She's a sweetheart. She's also a sex worker, adult performer, and yeah, she started this website to sort of provide support and assistance and information to people that are entering the industry. So
Wow.
Nice.
webcamstartup.com, great resource.
Yeah, wow, you're I'm so glad I met you, Kyra. I can't wait till we can post-pandemic hang out at some point, and yeah, 'cause I bet you we have a shit ton of stories that we can get from each other.
Yeah, for sure. I could talk about this stuff all day long, so don't mind me. It's something I'm very passionate about.
She likes her politics too, so.
Oh yeah.
Nice, nice,
Oh yeah.
Well,
nice.
yeah, and the thing is like sex work intersects with a lot of
Mhm.
my social politics, so you get that. You get a mix of sex and politics all in one.
Well,
So I'm very, very interested in like how the industry trends are for people that are disenfranchised, like um, Black, trans, disabled sex workers that aren't necessarily US or Canada based, that might be in other countries that have sort of
how's the
uh,
pandemic been
laws
for
and stuff.
for sex work? Because I'm sure that's been absolutely awful for sex work.
It's uh it's one of those things where it's hard to say because in some regards, yeah, it's been really, really bad. Like if you are a full service worker, definitely not really the greatest. If you are a stripper at a club, fucking awful because clubs are still closed, at least here. Um, but a lot of those people, that's why they migrated to OnlyFans, and that's why it became so popular because online sex worker was a booming industry during the pandemic. So think about it. You have all these dudes that are lonely and
Stuck at
horny and
home.
they're at home and they can't go out dating, they can't go meet their Tinder matches. What else are they supposed to do, right? And it provides that one-on-one interaction that a lot of these people crave, as opposed to just watching a video on Pornhub. You are actually like talking back and forth with this girl, and she's taking pictures just for you or whatever. So It's a lot more interactive and intimate in that way.
And that's one thing I'm surprised with the like the sex and like it's not even sex work sometimes in certain countries, but I've found that in certain international areas there's sex work always behind it, but some of them are just like the hangout clubs. Like I know in Japan and stuff like this, it's like you're just going to go and you're going to spend time drinking and hanging out with a beautiful girl.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a huge aspect that's overlooked is a lot of people just sort of think about it as like, these guys are just trying to get off. But for a lot of them, they crave the emotional connection and attachment. And I always joke that I'm an underpaid therapist because it feels like it at times, like a lot of the time it's more based on the emotional connection more than anything. And a lot of these dudes will pay me just to talk to them because they're straight up lonely. And again, going back to the whole like full service sex work thing, that is a legitimate service that full service sex workers provide. And in the UK, they're actually government, like there's government funded sex workers in the UK that provide services to people that have severe disabilities that, wouldn't get that kind of intimacy otherwise, people that maybe are paraplegic or something like that. So the government actually pays sex workers to meet with those kinds of clients.
Many years ago, there was actually a discussion on the political table in Ontario in regards to that. Like, was there a need for this? I have no idea where that ended up, but I know it was out there at one point because this is a very
Mhm.
valid concern, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
this.
it is a need. Like, it's a human need. We all have like a craving and a need to feel wanted and to feel loved and to feel that kind of like intimate connection with people. And not having that can result in severe mental health issues. And just because someone is severely disabled doesn't mean that they, shouldn't have that experience or they should be denied that kind of like intimate one-on-one contact with another human being. So it's a really big issue. And I mean, maybe it'll be controversial for me to say this, but I honestly think more access to those services might help curb the rise of inceldom that we're seeing.
Absolutely. I've been saying it for years that the biggest problem for the sex worker murders is the fact that it's prosecuted, that there's a guilt behind it. Because what happens is you have somebody participate in a sex work negotiation or transaction, and then immediately after the fact, they're racked with guilt. They don't want
Mm.
anybody to find this out. They're paranoid. So what do? They get rid of the only other person that possibly knows about this. And then
Yeah.
that like this has always been the case. I can remember I was baffled the first time I moved to Toronto. That's when there was the one guy they always claim, "Oh, we got him. This is all going to stop now," but it doesn't because there's not just one out there doing this. There's a lot of people that are
Yeah.
terrified of people finding them out. Um,
Well,
but
that's the thing because of the shame and the stigma associated with it. There's, that issue, which again is why education and normalizing it and talking about it in the media is very, very important. But then there's also the aspect again because it's criminalized in so many places. There have been many instances of John's clients, thinking that the sex worker that they're seeing might actually be an undercover police officer or panicking, thinking, oh shit, they might be like a police officer for whatever reason. And, you know, doing the same thing to them because they're worried that they're going to get in trouble with the law.
yeah, and for some reason, there seems to be a certain segment of society that is, okay, we're kind of okay sex work. We'll just prosecute the Johns. And I'm like, that just enhances the problem. Like
Yeah.
that drives it further underground into seedier places. If you're like, okay, the girl can post ads, but you know, the John's gonna get arrested afterwards. Like
Yeah,
that's
so
that's
that's
a
referred
really
to as
bad
the
idea.
Nordic model, and that's actually the law that we currently have in Canada, where selling sex is 100% legal, but buying it is not. So it just creates the same issues as before. And again, it creates more of that issue of these guys panicking, thinking that the girl that they're seeing might not be like she might be an informant or something, and um that's incredibly risky to the girls involved. You have to be very careful to like not give off the impression that you might be law enforcement or law enforcement aligned because that can be legitimately very dangerous to you.
So
So that's a big issue. The other thing that I have a huge issue with in Canada is a lot of the laws again, you can sell sex, but we can't advertise it on certain platforms and stuff. And one of the big things is we have a lot of really strict, fucked up laws on what's considered brothel keeping. So let's say you had two escorts, for example, and they decided for their own safety and maybe to save some money, they decide to work out of the same apartment. They decide to rent an apartment together, and they're like, okay, this is going to be our space to work out of. And then if anything happens, like, I'm here, so you know what I mean? So there's always someone there. That is considered a legal brothel, and they can both go to jail for upwards of 10 years in Canada.
That's insane.
Just because
There's actually
two
a
escorts
case.
that work together. Yeah.
There's a case making it through the courts. There's a couple from London, Ontario, I believe, that were basically they were running an escort agency, and they were apparently, from what I've heard in the press reportings on this, because I don't know these people, but they were very above board with it with their girls. They treated them well. They hired them drivers and security and all sorts of stuff, and they're up on these brothel charges, right? So
Yep. Well,
I
that's the thing. Like the drivers and stuff can get charged. Any kind of security personnel can get charged. If you have any kind of like agent or manager that's helping you with your bookings and helping you screen clients, that's a big thing is like safety screening, making sure this guy is who he says he is. If someone helps you with that, that's 100% illegal. So you're essentially forced to just be out on your own and not receive any support from anyone else. You can't have someone working with you or helping you in any way, shape, or form, which is not exactly safe. Yeah, and it prevents us from doing those kinds of collectives and co-ops and stuff, and it prevents us from collectivizing together because it's literally illegal for us to.
So
Wow.
if I gave you a magic wand, Nyra, if I gave you the magic wand, what would you do with the magic wand to just make this all better, to like revolutionize the industry completely? I'm your fairy
Uh,
godmother, and I can grant your wish.
so there'd probably be a few things, unfortunately. Um, I guess the three major things are dealing with the insane levels of poverty and financial disenfranchisement, legalizing sex work completely across the board, and oh God, how do I pick? Yeah, I guess also providing more capital and more financial backing to sex workers that want to collectivize.
Nice, nice. I actually we are going to talk because a friend of mine literally just she's doing a sex toy startup out of her. Like she's working with I can't say the names on this right now, but we'll talk because she's doing a sex toy startup, whole woman's sex empowerment thing out of New York with I won't even try and bring up the groups, but I'm going to connect you with her because she's a fantastic person to know in
Yeah,
this
I'd love
respect.
that.
So
I'd for
that's
sure love that. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
I'm
but if I
definitely
had
going
to
to put
pick
you
one
two in
thing, I think
touch.
it would just be legalizing sex work across the board. Um, and giving like sex workers more tools to sort of self-advocate, I think is the big thing right now.
So if I can suggest one thing, how do you feel about unionizing there?
Um, Again, it's a big process. It's something that is in the works right now. One of the big things that a lot of people are working towards is actually essentially creating their own like lobby groups and doing pro sex work lobbying. But it's very difficult because you have to consider, the kinds of people that we're working
It's
against.
and
Like
it's
there are
still
a
a
lot of
criminal activity. This is still like to put your face up there and say I'm a sex worker means a lot of people
yeah,
are just going to think you're committing crimes or you're doing it against your will.
yeah, that's the thing. And we're fighting against these very large, well-funded evangelical groups that essentially want sex work to be completely abolished on all aspects, not even just escort services and what you think of when you think of sex work, but even like porn. There is a really big organization right now that is essentially working to completely ban pornography off the internet. They think porn in general is just sexual exploitation, and that women should not be allowed to work in the sex industry at all.
Well, we can start talking about evangelicals for sure, because literally it I just saw in the news today, that it came out that the right to life movement in Canada, which is clearly backed by the evangelical movement,
Hmm.
has been taking over ridings. They've been infiltrating riding associations and pumping up their chosen candidates to, literally increase, like the evangelical movement, the right to life movement. Let's just put them all on the same page here. But before we go down that avenue, Nyra, can I get your website? I'm totally becoming an OnlyFans subscriber.
Can you what?
Like, what's your website? I want to know your website. Like, where can I send people when somebody goes, that was great. We just listened to Nyra for an hour, and she sounds like the most amazing people. How can I put people in touch with you?
Instagram's kinky.nyra, pretty much the same thing. If you just search Kinky Nyra in Google, you will find me. But if you want to find all of my links and pretty much all the sites that I'm on, except I haven't added my Fansly to it yet, I've been slacking on that. You can go to allmylinks.com/KinkyNyra.
Allmylinks.com/KinkyNyra. Kinky
You
Nyra.
got it. You
Excellent.
got it. Thank
Excellent.
you so
So
much.
that's been fantastic. Thank you, Nyra. I've loved this conversation, and yeah, I hope you stick around and chat with us for a bit.
Yeah, I'll stick around and listen to the rest of the conversation. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my 2 cents on that.
No problem. No problem. Thank you very much.